Good morning. Glad you could join us. So I've taken some time this week extra time to pray. And I like to do that because it's kind of like you recalibrate, you reboot, okay? You kind of pause and you reboot. Or like I like to talk about at the beginning of the year, you get your compass true north, because it's so important to be focused on God. And so I came across some things that I think were helpful with that. Are there some verses in the Bible that you've read for years and years and years, and you realize, I don't think I really understand those? Well, one that's been coming into focus a little more clearly is where Jesus said, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And I know I talked about this, I think about a month or two ago. And sometimes it's a little bit tricky to understand, I think. But I came across something by C.S. Lewis, but I found it in a book by Jerry Sittser, so I want to give them both their credit. But I read this book by C.S. Lewis a long time ago. It's called The Great Divorce. It has nothing to do with marriage. It has to do with the great divorce between heaven and hell. It's an allegory. And there's this narrator, and he's shown around from heaven to hell on this bus trip. I think that's what it says on the front of the book, a bus trip from heaven to hell. And makes some very, very interesting points. And so this was something that Jerry Sittser picked up on. And he says, in The Great Divorce, C.S. Lewis describes a procession in heaven to honor a great saint who has just died. So there's this great parade coming along and just all this hooting and hollering and celebration. I don't know if that's the way it's going to be, but in the story, that's the way it goes. And so the narrator of the story wonders if this is someone that he's going to know, like some big name Christian, somebody who wrote books, some preacher. Who's it going to be? And by the sight of the huge procession, he obviously thinks it's going to be somebody famous. But the narrator has a guide, and the guide's got an accent. And he says, it's someone you'll never have heard of. It's someone you'll never have heard of on earth. Her name on earth was Sarah Smith, and she lived in Golders Green. And the narrator comments, well, she seems to be a person of particular importance. And his guide responds, aye, she is one of the great ones. Ye have heard that fame in this country and fame on earth are two quite different things. Well, isn't that the truth? And it goes on to explain that people that are famous on earth, for the most part, they get a lot of their accolades here. I'm not dissing people that have big churches or people that have big names and have written and whatever else. And I'm not saying that they did it for that reason, and that's so important, the motive why we do things. Jesus said that if you pray so that other people notice, you got your reward already. Just go to your closet and pray. If you give so that other people will notice, you got your credit already. But if you simply fulfill the will of God in your generation, however small it might be. I love what Mother Teresa said, and that's been recorded. She talks about not doing great things, but talks about doing simple things, little things with great love. People know when things are done with great love. Those are the things that bring tears to our eyes when we see the kindness expressed to somebody else or to ourselves. We recognize that. Goes on to say, Sarah Smith was great in the eyes of heaven because she fulfilled her calling without regard for earthly honors. She did the will of God for God's sake and for the world's good. Though the world forgot, God did not. He honored her for it. I think that's so true. There's so many things that the world's going to forget. And so I just want to encourage you today, because you're out there on the front lines every day with people who need a touch from God. They need a word of kindness. And though nobody else is going to give you credit for it, you're not going to get a like on Facebook. You're not going to get a comment on Facebook. It's not going to show up in social media. But God will never forget the kindnesses that you show. Had a chance to be on part of the New Hope board meeting this past week, and one of our although he's a new board member, Kenny, it turns out that, he's been a part of us for a long time, and I loved what he said, because we have a new team that's going down, that it's the first team since the pandemic started. And one of the things that he said was, just implored the new team, this team that was going down, to remember the people that are the cooks, the people that cook for the children. They cook the Feed My Starving Children food that we send down. To make sure you greet them, because they're the people that serve every day. To go to the school teachers, to go to the people who are the caretakers of the property, the people that get overlooked. I just loved that comment. You know what? It's the kinds of things that any of us can do. You don't have to be a spiritual giant to do that, and you can do that right where you're at. God bless you, and know that the small things you do today with great love will always be remembered by heaven.